21. When the sun begins to cast longer shadows, the days to grow shorter, and the nights to lengthen and turn cooler, we in California experience a brief return of summer. It is as though the year paused a moment on the threshold of the rainy season and turned back to look somewhat longingly at its rich and fruitful months of blossom and activity and growth, a little loath to go. And that second summer, we gather, in that second summer, we gather our harvests. Like the year, I pause now toward the end of my allotted time to glance backward and to gather my harvest of experience and growth and friendship and happy memory. And like the year, I find myself warm, mellow, sunshiny, and kindly in all my motives and in my intent toward all mankind. What has been my harvest of the years? In these papers, I have tried to sketch lightly and with broad strokes of my pencil the development of my life and the progression of my work and memories of men and events, the homely philosophy that has grown in my mind from my experiences and contracts, the lessons of nature that have been learned through my association with that peer of all teachers, and the ripened thoughts that come to me whenever I sit down quietly to review my crowded, busy, profitable, and happy life. Now, when I have to turn my last page for you, I feel strongly moved to sum up the whole and try to see, as much for myself as for you, my friendly, patient, and appreciative audience, what is the nature, extent, and value of the crops I have been gathering and spreading for your inspection? As though they were the grains from the field, the fruits from the orchard, and the flowers from the garden, bursting now with seed for another season's planting, I seem to see three kinds of crops in the barn and bin and crib and storehouse of this series of papers. I see the harvest of work accomplished and aims achieved, and here I observe that the crop is somewhat short of what it might have been. I see the harvested experiences and lessons that have molded and impressed and enriched my own life, and here there is a first-class yield, and more than the sowing seemed to merit. I see the harvest of dear friendships, happy memories, recollections of triumphs won, and honors bestowed. Here the storehouse floor groans, and the walls bulge, and the shingles on the roof have to give a little to make room. For the harvest is rich and heavy and abundant, and we may even have to put on an L or so to accommodate everything that is headed this way. Looking backward down the seasons, it is very interesting to me to observe how the last crop has increased with the first two, and seems to have been a result of them. Perhaps there is some significance in this fact. There are three goals toward which all men of ambition strive: toward wealth, power, or fame. You may think of a fourth, the goal of pure knowledge for its own sake, taking no account of the other three incentives. But I am inclined to believe that the most devoted and absorbed scientist, or the most selfless thinker, or the most selfless thinker or scholar actually has a subconscious, if not a conscious, yearning for that power which is knowledge. So it may be safe to say that there are really only those three goals. When I began my life work, I was definitely not interested in money or in money making, except as a means to an end. And when I lapsed, as I did once or twice, and began to find myself a money maker, I was compelled to execute a sharp right about face and get back to my original program. I had no desire to be famous in the ordinary sense of the word, though I was actuated so strongly by an impulse to serve mankind that perhaps approbation of others was more of an incentive than I had realized. I did have a great yearning to know, and it was not long before I was aware that there is no more useful key to the gates of all that this world holds for man than the key of exact knowledge. I can remember now the keen zest I had for every sort and kind of information, whether it applied directly to my work or not. And the reason I remember it so clearly of that sight, active, busy nuisance of a boy and youth I was, is because I have never lost it to this day. A library to me was a gold mine. A book was a trap skillfully baited to entice me head over heels. A man who knew something definitely could catch me with half a dozen words, and the great debt I owe some of the solid and substantial and learned men and women of wise years who were my father's neighbors and friends in New England can never be paid. I was not a bookworm nor a prodigy. I was much more certainly set down by my elders as inquisitive and sometimes a bother. But I did want to know, and I was unscrupulous in stealing something from any store that lay open to me, and tireless, though maybe tiresome, in my anxiety to get at the plum preserves in the closets of other minds. As a young man, I had a good many hardships that were salutary and strengthening to my will and my purpose, even though some of them may have taxed me physically more than was good. But none of those trials and difficulties weighed at all against the growing power I felt through the learning I acquired from both nature, from the conversations of the experienced and the wise, and from books. I've referred already to the fact that my own course through nature's school brought me into close and invaluable contact with great and thoughtful and wise men and women. As my mind matured and developed, I became more and more free of the honorable and delightful fellowship of those who are committed to the pursuit of knowledge. If I have gleaned from these associations and this practice a wide and general education, it is no more than natural. The friendships that are mine, the honors that have come to me, the success I have had, the reputation I have gained, and the achievements of my life of work with flowers and trees are all due to my love of learning for its own sake, and my habit of testing theories in practical application, and of gaining from practical work the theories on which my conclusions about life are based. Concerning the harvest of the years and work accomplished and aspirations achieved, the record is written in flowers and trees and shrubs and grains and vines now growing and reproducing themselves in probably every climate on this planet and in almost every country. My very first work was intensely practical. I saw a need for greater productivity, finer qualities, and sturdier plants, and I set to work to collaborate with nature on this task. I had a secret ambition, even in those first years, that I have mentioned to but few people, and that was an ambition to work solely with ornamental trees. A few of the great and majestic trees of New England, such as the elm and the oak, as well as many that were dear to me for their beauty and grace, promised large returns and satisfaction if they could be duplicated in other families of trees less stately or less lovely. When I came to California, I was ravished by the redwoods and California live oaks, by the eucalyptus, then newly come to this country from Australia, and by the walnut.